All right, so in this short video, we're going to go over the basics of Mendel's famous experiments, but we're also going to, which you're probably familiar with already, but we're going to make a special effort to try and tie the stuff that he did back to the process of meiosis, which is what we learned about last week in the production of gametes or egg and sperm cells. And we're also going to make sure that we tie it back to the idea of genes and gene expression and proteins to tie all this together, because I don't think that's done very often. All right, so first of all, here's Mendel. Mendel was a monk. He lived at the latter half of the 18th century, the 19th century, in the 1860s, 70s, 80s. And he was very interested in inheritance and how things looked or didn't look like their parents. I always think Mendel might have been looked at kind of strangely by his fellow monk friends because he was very much into sex and reproduction. And I guess you wouldn't traditionally say that was a monkish pastime. But anyway, Mendel was studying this a lot. And luckily, he picked the pea plant as his experimental organism. And it was a very lucky choice because peas have some very simple genetics. There are many other plants that do all kinds of weird and wonderful things with their genetics. And we'll maybe get into some of that next week when we talk about more complicated forms of genetics. But peas are very straightforward. And so what Mendel wanted to look at was different traits or characteristics in a pea plant and whether they were passed on to the offspring pea plants. He studied many things. He studied flower color, petal color. He studied the texture of the seeds, the height of the plants, all kinds of different things. Some of his most famous work was on the colors and the textures of the seeds, whether they were yellow or green or round or wrinkled, and also on the color of the petals. And we're going to focus on the color of the petals for this example. And so he basically took what we would call today true breeding pea plants. And when we say true breeding, what I really mean is that he had traced the ancestry of these pea plants and all their offspring for multiple generations. And for example, this one here always had purple flowered parents, and there was always purple flowered baby pea plants produced. So in its whole ancestry, it had always been purple. That's what we call true breeding. And this is a flower from a true breeding white petaled pea plant. It's hard to say that fast. And that means that all of its ancestors had been white flowered, and they only ever had white flowered pea plant babies. So we have a pure purple flowered lineage and a pure white flowered lineage. And what he wanted to do was cross them with each other. So he got to pick who got to be the mom and who got to be the dad. And he did both directions. So he had purple flowered dads, white flowered moms, and then he had white flowered dads and purple flowered moms. And he showed it didn't really matter whether the purple was the dad or the mom. It didn't affect the outcome of his results. And so he wanted to control the parentage of what the baby pea plants were going to be. And so he had to basically control where the pollen went, which pollen got to fertilize which flower. So inside the flower, you have the sexual parts of the flower or the plant, and you can think of the eggs, which are like inside here, inside what's called the carpel. That's like the eggs or the ovaries for the pea plant. And then you can think of the pollen kind of as the sperm. It's not exactly the same, but it contains the male gametes, so the sperm of the plant. And so we wanted to make sure that he controlled what sperm went to what egg in this pea plant situation. Now, normally bees would just be flying around and moving pollen randomly, and you'd never know the parentage of any particular pea. So he had to be very, very careful with his experiments. And so what he's doing here in this purple flower plant is he's opened up the petals and he's using scissors to cut off the stamens. The stamens are the male parts of the plant. So he's kind of effectively kind of castrating this purple flower pea plant so that it cannot self-fertilize itself. So he's removing all its own, because plants are hermaphroditic. Many plants are hermaphroditic, pea plants included. And so this purple flower pea plant can make both eggs and sperm inside the same flower, and this white flower pea plant can make both eggs and sperm inside the same flower. But we don't want them to self-fertilize. We want to control what sperm goes where. Oh, Mendel did. So, hold on. So, does the work here? The, gosh, my little pen has stopped working here. What he is doing, what this paintbrush is showing is that he is actually acting as the bee in this little scenario, and he is using his paintbrush to move pollen from this white flowered plant onto the female parts of this purple flower plant. So the purple flower plant is going to be the mom here. So I'll do a female symbol, and in this example, the white flowered or white petal plant is acting as the male. It's being the pollen donor. All right. So he's acting like a bee and doing this cross. So he's controlling who the parents are, a purple flowered mom and a white flowered dad. All right. So he does that. He does that thousands of times over. That's a very hard thing to do. It sounds very easy, but it takes a lot of precision. It's very easy to mess up the flower. But if it goes right, then the eggs get fertilized and they turn into peas. Here are the peas. So this cross had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 babies, and those babies are all going to grow up from the peas into pea plants, and then you can look at the flowers and see what color they are. And in this experiment, we can see that all the babies have purple flowers. Doesn't matter that there was a white colored parent, all the flowers are purple, and they're as purple, the same amount of purple as the parent. So this is as purple as this. It's not like half purple and mixed with white. It's the same amount of purple. All right, so I'm going to stop this video here and start a new video where we explain the genetics behind what's going on in this scenario.